friends, you're in the military with summary channel. On this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous night both the Russians and the Ukrainians once again attacked each other, but we have a huge gap between these attacks. According to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, the Russians during the night used 236 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. As for the previous attack, according to the Minister of Defense, the Russians used 219 drones, and as for the day before yesterday, the Russians, according to the Minister of Defense, used 173 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. And as you can see, these are very big numbers. We're not saying about massive attacks, but these are very big numbers, and we during the previous days discussed a lot about the consequences of these attacks. The Russians managed to destroy the Chernihiv power station. We received updates about significant destructions on the territory of Kryvyi Rog and many other different town sites and places. As for the Ukrainian side, during the night they also attacked the territory of Russia, but according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, the Ukrainians used just 13 drones to attack the territory of the Russian Federation, and this is a very surprising number because it seems that this is the first time since the beginning of this year, or probably since the end of November or the beginning of November of 2025, when the Ukrainians used just 13, such a low number of drones. So this is the lowest attack probably even for many months or maybe even years from the Ukrainian side. And the question is why the Ukrainians used so much, why the Ukrainians used this number of drones, so low number of drones. Maybe the Ukrainians start suffering some problems with supply chains and with logistics, and as we've discussed, the Russians were attacking these infrastructural objects significantly these days. Maybe the Ukrainians start suffering some problems with this. We need to check this information on the situation during the upcoming night between the 19th and the 20th of April of 2026, and if nothing changes, then most likely we can make a conclusion about some crisis in the Ukrainian supply and logistic chains.
Drømmer du om at få dine penge til at vokse? Få 3 gode grunde til, hvorfor aktiesparekonto kan være noget for dig.
Now let's discuss the strikes. We have lots of very interesting details, and first let's talk about the city of Chernihiv that was attacked by Russians. And in this video we can see the Chernihiv oil refinery, or not the Chernihiv oil refinery, but the Chernihiv oil depot. And as a result of attack with drones, this oil depot was completely destroyed, and this oil depot was located in the central part of the city of Chernihiv. This day the city of Chernihiv is under very heavy fire, and probably this is the reason once again why Zelensky made lots of statements about the role of the Republic of Belarus in these attacks that are taking place in the most northern parts of Ukraine. As we discussed, according to information we have, the Russians are building equipment in different radars and retranslators along the border that allow the Russians to have a better signal and to make more attacks and more effective attacks in the northern parts of Ukraine. We have lots of videos and lots of updates from the southern regions, and probably the most important one is this one. The Ukrainians are testing new tactics in the Black Sea, and in this video we can see a Navy drone of the armed forces of Ukraine that served as air defense system. In this video we can see a Navy drone, and when the Russians launched another wave of Geraint drones, the Ukrainians tried to bring them down with anti-drones that were located on these Navy platforms across the Black Sea. So as you can see, according to these updates, the Ukrainians decided to move their air defense forces as close as possible to Crimea, and it seems that now the Ukrainians are trying to improve their air defense positions through the Black Sea, and this will allow the Ukrainians to destroy the Russian drones over the Black Sea without allowing the Russian drones to enter the southwestern parts of Ukraine, the Odessa region. So every time in the future, most likely within the next 6 months, if the Ukrainians are able to improve this technology, every time the Russians launch drones in the direction of Odessa, and we know that the Russians these days use hundreds of drones to attack this region, but with this technology the Ukrainians will be able to attack these drones over this part of the Black Sea, which can lead to a lowering of results for the Russian side. Another important update is coming from Crimea. According to information we have, during the previous 12-24 hours, the Ukrainians attacked some oil depot on the territory of the city of Sevastopol, and here we can see the consequences of attack, a black smoke over the city. And overnight, between the 18th and the 19th of April of 2026, lots of explosions and lots of attacks were recorded on the territory of the city of Taganrog. The Ukrainian Navy launched a precision strike with Neptunes on the production building of the Atlant Aero plant in Taganrog. This defense enterprise is an important part of the Russian military-industrial complex where the drones were developed and manufactured, in particular Molnia strike and reconnaissance drones. So these are the objects that were attacked by the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours.
Har du også prøvet næsten alt? Forsøgt forskellige veje til vægttab og udsat.
Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. We have lots of very interesting changes, and first let's talk about the Sumy direction where the Russians continue advancing. And during the previous night we have small changes in the area of the settlement of Miropolye. And in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking soldiers and troops of the armed forces of the Russian Federation that were moving through these fields in the direction of the settlement of Miropolye from the southeast. So the Russians, as we can see, are trying to advance in the direction of this big forest, and probably using this big forest as a foothold, the Russians will move further in the direction of the settlement of Miropolye from the south, and maybe even in the direction of Mala Rybitsa from the northeast. So the Russians continue offensive operation in the Sumy region, and in coming days we'll get more updates from this area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kharkiv direction. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting changes. As you can see, the map has been adjusted significantly. This is exactly what we were talking about yesterday. If you remember, just yesterday we discussed that right before I start making the yesterday's video, we had the report that the Russians improved their position significantly in this area. And today, pro-Ukrainian sources published a video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on the territory of the settlement by the name of Akhrimovka. This settlement, as you can see, according to geolocation, is located to the south of the river of Volcha. So during this video there were two episodes. One of them was as the Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation on this inside of this building, and another episode was from the area of the Shkolnaya Street, which is located in the southwestern parts of this settlement, where the Ukrainians, 2 or 3 or 4 Ukrainian soldiers were moving through these buildings trying to find Russian soldiers in this area. So based on this video we came to the conclusion that the forest along the border is about to be taken by the Russians, that the biggest parts of this forest is already under complete Russian control and that the Russians continue advancing. And currently the northeastern parts of Kharkiv region is the fastest direction where the Russians have the biggest space of offensive operation. So here we can see the changes on the ground between the dates, and this is the 40th of April of 2026, and according to different sources this is exactly a turning point, a breaking point in the northeastern Kharkiv region. So this is the situation by the end of the 14th, this is the situation by the end of the 15th of April, when the Russians announced that as a result of clashes they established complete control over the settlement of Ovchansky Hutory. 2 days after, the Russians reported that they managed to take under complete control the village of Zybina and to improve their positions to the south of Ovchansky Hutory. And 2 more days after, we received the report that the Russians entered the settlement of Akhrimovka, which is located already on the Ukrainian side of the river of Vovcha. So from this configuration, from this perspective, we see that in coming days most likely the Russians will finish the battle for this part of the river of Volcha and for the Ukrainian bank of the river, and at the same time and during the same period of time the Russians will continue offensive operation in the northeastern direction as well as from the northeastern direction in the southwestern direction, with the purpose to establish complete control over the river of Volcha. And from this very moment the Russians will decide what to do next and how to advance further in the southern direction. So we see that the battle for the northeastern part of Kharkiv region is intensifying, And all these attacks, all these updates are coming with updates from the city of Kupiansk, where, according to information we have, another turning point of the battle for this area occurred, and it seems that in coming days the Russians once again will announce complete control over the eastern bank of the river Voskol and over the western part of the city of Kupiansk itself, and then most likely from these two directions, from the northeastern part of Kharkiv region and from the city of Kupiansk itself, the Russians will attack in the direction of the Pechenegi water reservoir with the purpose to establish complete control over this pocket. So it seems that the Russians are tasked, when talking about the global scope, they are tasked to take under complete control the pocket and the gap, the territory between these rivers, between the river of Voskol and the river of Seversky Donetsk, because these rivers are something like a natural barrier that will allow the Russians to stabilize the front line, to get as close as possible to the city of Kharkiv itself, and the most important, with control over these pockets between rivers, the Russians would be able to force the Ukrainians to move their rocket launch systems deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, and to move their drone systems and drone launching sites deep as possible inside of the Poltava region as well, which obviously will improve the security situation around the city of Belgorod, around the city of Kursk, and so on. So we now see that the buffer zone is becoming more relevant thing than any other operation along the line of combat contact.
Der sker sindssygt mange vilde ting i den her kamp. Hårde tacklinger og et slagsmål, der skal mysle.
Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting changes. We have updates. We have changes on the ground in the most southern parts of the settlement based on the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in these parts of the settlement with FPV drones. So based on this video, we have added small correction. And we have another video published by pro-Ukrainian sources from the most eastern parts of the settlement, this one, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in the most eastern parts of the settlement with FPV drones, but as of this video we don't know for sure whether we need to adjust the map or not, because the sources and the author of this video said that this video is 1 month old, so which means that this video was made somewhere at the beginning of March of 2026, so that is why it's very difficult to understand whether the Russians managed to save their positions in these parts of Konstantinovka or those attacks were repelled and the Russians were forced to fall back. But anyway, we continue receiving updates and we are getting more and more updates that the Russians continue advancing in the city of Konstantinovka, despite the fact that these advances are not so fast in comparison even with the northeastern part of Kharkiv region. Now let's talk about the Dnipropetrovsk direction. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes were recorded in the area of Novopavlovka and Ivanovka, and these are the changes, and this information was provided by pro-Russian sources, and this is a very interesting situation because currently there are two bridgeheads on the Ukrainian side of the river of Volcha. The first bridgehead is located between the settlements of Ivanovka and Novopavlovka, and this is the territory where the Russians improve their positions these days, and the second bridgehead is located on the Ukrainian side of the river of Volcha between the settlements of Velika Mikhailovka and Gavrilovka. It seems that the Russians right now are tasked to improve their position significantly on the Ukrainian side of the river with the purpose to establish complete control over these three settlements: the settlement of Gavrilovka, the settlement of Velika Mikhailovka, and the settlement of Pokrovska, because without taking these settlements under complete control, the Russians will not be able to secure the northern Zaporozhye direction, and the Ukrainians will always have possibilities to counter-attack in the direction of Gulay-Pole and Uspinovka from the north, which will always stop or slow down the Russian major offensive operation that is currently taking place in the direction of the city of Zaporozhye. So it seems that the Russians have small tactical tasks to take under complete control these settlements, which most likely in the end will reduce the pressure from the Ukrainian side, which will allow the Russians to continue advancing further in the direction of Zaporozhye with high pace. We have covered most of the updates regarding the territory Ukraine and the